What's your prediction on?
Good evening, members. Okay, it's now 6:30. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to this this meeting of the EPH, where we are going to continue, okay, with looking at agenda item 8, which has been adjourned from not the last meeting but the meeting before. Just to make everybody aware, there are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately, and the fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs and we will meet in the War Memorial Park. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet, and can all members please ensure that mobile phones are turned off or turned to silent. Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise, in relation to the last meeting, so this is an adjourned meeting, I put a motion forward to the committee and it was unanimously supported. And the body of that motion hasn't been carried out, and I just wonder what we're going to do, because obviously what I said in the motion is that we had hard copies of the water and the transport study, that we would discuss those two papers. We would also encourage, which you did at the last meeting, and this Monday, those people that actually produced the documents to come along. We also asked, and all of us asked, that David George was invited to this committee so that we could have a presentation from him and ask him questions. And the other bit of the motion was that we would have the updated policies and see sight of those. So I don't know where we are in relation to that motion and why that hasn't happened. Sorry.
Right. Thank you very much for your inquiry and into the motion, Councillor James. We discussed the transport study, okay, and also the water cycle study last Monday, okay, and with respect to David George, officers have set up a meeting with David George so that we can avail of his skills, okay.
We asked that he was able to come to a committee meeting, that we, not that the officers, that we were able to ask him questions, that then we would be able to he would be able to give us a presentation. So it wasn't that it was an officer meeting.
He was a speaker at the meeting on Monday night. Okay, he actually came along here. Okay, unfortunately you weren't with us. You were replaced by and represented by Paul Harvey. Okay, members were, hold on please, Councillor Cubitt. Members were allowed to actually ask questions of David George. And if I remember correctly, and please correct me if I'm wrong, okay, with the motion, it wasn't get a presentation from David George. It was actually to ensure that officers worked with David George, okay, to the benefit of the water cycle study.
It wasn't. It was actually, it's not for David George to come along to give a 2-minute presentation. It was that he had the opportunity to come to a meeting, that we was able then to ask him questions, because at the last meeting we were wanting to ask a lot more, and Councillor Kerry, others and other people said that they were ready. It was in a whole area that they didn't know about. So that isn't what we said, or what I said.
Thank you, Councillor James. I've actually got the wording here that's been given to me. So it says here, Councillor James then put forward a recommendation to adjourn the meeting as it was felt that the report was too premature and the committee should reconvene after they had opportunity to discuss the water cycle study with attendance from the consultants, the transport assessment, the work carried out by the Whitchurch Conservation Group, information on how the special circumstances would affect the plan documents and the draft local plan policy updates following the comments and questions raised by the committee previously. So my understanding is from that wording there is that there is, we discussed the water cycle study and we discussed the transport assessment. Okay, that was done on Monday evening with the consultants and with Hampshire County Council. Okay, then we it was to also discuss the work carried out by the Whitchurch Conservation Group. Okay, and that meeting has been set up so that with David George. Okay, so that we can go from there. Okay, and then we can move forward. So my understanding is that everything in this motion that was put forward, because I have the wording here, okay, has been done. Okay, so but hold on, I'd like to.
Thank you, Councillor James. So what we've agreed was to officers to work with David George at some point, and we've set up the meeting with David George during August. Following that meeting, we're happy to bring David George and the President if there's anything that you needed, or if you have any questions, ask David George at some point in the future EPS meetings.
In the meeting, at our last meeting on the 8th, that this is premature because we haven't had the opportunity to have those discussions. So you didn't actually discuss the water study report. You had the representatives at the last meeting. You didn't discuss the transport assessment. But what we were wanting in relation to Dave George is for him to come along to give us a presentation. I welcome that he's going to talk to you, but that's part of another piece of work he's required to do in relation to his funding anyway. This is that we wanted to be able to ask him questions and for us to have a confidence in what we're doing. So, and in a sense, it's chicken before egg, isn't it? We're going to now be discussing a report tonight, and we haven't done what we said we wanted. And there was a motion; it was unanimously supported, and you're now saying that you're going to have a meeting with him on the 24th of August, and then after that, if we want to, we can have a then it can come forward. But that's after we've already done this piece of work tonight before us. But it's that's not what we asked at the last meeting, and who made that decision to change that?
I think following the meeting with David George, if he would like to present anything to EPH members other than what he will be discussing with officers, it's down to David George to make the request to us, and we should be able to bring him to EPH. We can't just force him to bring him to an EPH meeting when he's already agreed to meet with the officers and work with us on what needs to be, what sort of evidence or whatever need to be presented to the officers. So where we stand right now is to have the meeting with David George at some point in August and bring him along to an EPH meeting at some point in the future. Thank you.
He did ask to come to the meeting. He requested at the last meeting. I don't know if you've all seen sight of his email that was sent out this afternoon as well, saying that he was disappointing, obviously, because he wanted to come to this meeting. And we wanted him as members to come along. So we haven't had that opportunity to do that piece of work. And where did that change along the way? We had agreed something, the meeting was adjourned, that you were going to go away and set that up. Why didn't he come to that meeting on Monday? Or why did we not have him here at this meeting prior to us then doing the piece of work before us?
Mr. David George was present on Monday, where members were able to ask questions, and as we speak, we're happy to have David George at any time following the meeting with the officers. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to cut across here, okay, and just again just to reiterate to the committee that he actually was here, okay. Yes, he spoke for 2 minutes in the public participation, but then he was questioned, okay, for 10 minutes, okay, by members who were here at that meeting, okay. So you know there has been an opportunity to actually question David George. Unfortunately, you weren't here, but, you know, Councillor, hold on, Councillor Cubitt, I will come to you. Okay, but the big problem is the fact that if we end up, okay, not making any comment on this spatial strategy, okay, then we risk it going forward, okay, to public consultation, okay, and to Cabinet, okay, where there has been no comment, okay, made by this committee. Okay, and I do not want that to happen. So there has been a meeting set up with David George, okay, which was the thrust of the motion. He was here at the last meeting. He spoke, okay, for 10 minutes, and he was questioned quite vociferously, okay, by members. And I think it's important that that it's recognised the fact that the committee did have an opportunity at the last meeting to question him, okay, and he is working with officers at a meeting, okay, that has been set up. I'll come to you in a minute, Councillor Tomlin. Okay, I've got Councillor Cubitt first, and then I've got Councillor Tomlin. Okay, Councillor James, I'll come back to you in a minute, please. Okay, Councillor Cubitt.
I believe that I seconded the motion that was unanimously
Yes.
agreed on. And I have to say that I completely agree with everything that Councillor James has just said. I don't believe that the motion has been fulfilled by the events of Monday night. And when you read out the motion that was agreed, number 2 and number 3 and number 4 were not achieved, and number 2 was not achieved either because we didn't get to the end of either of the reports. I don't accept the premise that if we don't get a chance to discuss the spatial strategy today, that we then rescind or relinquish the right to discuss this paper in due course before it goes to the Cabinet. I don't understand why this political administration is so hell-bent on sticking to a timetable when the political landscape is in disarray and the Conservatives are in disarray and the number of houses that are going to be imposed on the south of England could very well change, and all of the neighbouring authorities in the south of England, most of them have stopped working on their local plan. Why is Basingstoke and Deane determined to continue as if nothing has changed?
Thank you. Hold on, members.
Thank you, Councillor Cubitt. I think that the real point and answer to your point is actually in section 9 of the report, and I do refer you to it, members, because section 9 of the report is really... Oh, sorry, that's on page 51, page 51. In section 9 of the report, when we look at options analysis, what it's talking about here is really the point that you're making, is that the planning system is in a process of evolution. We are actually preparing a report. This report and all of our evidence base is evolving. The policies are evolving. The strategies are evolving. The purpose of doing a Regulation 18 consultation is to capture all of those comments to help to shape the plan. So the reason why, as officers, we're continuing to prepare our work is to enable the council to actually consult with the community and seek their views and comments so that it can also evolve based on those views and comments as well. And in the absence of that consultation, we won't have that opportunity. So it has been addressed in this report. We are aware as officers around the issues of the issue of the housing number, evidence base, spatial strategy, which sites, how you might want the policies to also change, and that's the reason why you go through this process.
Supplementary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, I hear you, but why are other neighbouring authorities not interpreting government instructions, firstly, in the same way? And number two, you make, you as in the council makes a very bold statement that it restores the 5-year supply, and it's clearly untrue, that statement, because none of the sites identified in this local plan update will be delivered in the next 5 years. So the local plan 5-year housing supply, which is as a direct result of total abject failure of this administration and this council to ensure that the strategic sites that should have been delivered have not been delivered, this speedy approach to the spatial strategy is not going to ameliorate our 5-year housing supply.
So the process of going through the local plan examination is actually to present these sites, and at the point of making of a local plan, it is made with a 5-year supply. It's not actually a case that a local plan would complete examination, be adopted and not actually start the process with the 5-year supply. So that's the reason why for this authority, rather than actually being, I will say, having these applications being made and us having to respond to them, the best way for us to defend development happening on sites that we do not want is to actually secure a local plan with our sites, which from day one will be actually a position of a 5-year land supply, enable us to defend those decisions and actually secure development in the borough, meeting the needs of the community where they want them.
The only problem is when we go through the sites, and I've read your document very comprehensively, the strategic sites that have been identified as the strategic sites going forward, all of them are at the back end of the local plan update. There's not one that's going to be delivered within the next 5 years. So I don't understand how you can make that statement. But nonetheless, we digress. The issue at hand is an emotion by elected members representing our residents. We are democratically elected to represent our residents, and whatever the local government train is that is on track can't carry on regardless of the will of the residents and can't carry on regardless of the wish of members. And we as members asked for a comprehensive evaluation of the water cycle study, which, by the way, your officers didn't even want us to even give a cursory discussion about. It was only because of our request that we got them to come. And it's a great shame we didn't get enough time to speak about the intricacies of the document, because I think the document is very severely flawed. We didn't get sufficient time to talk about the transport study either, which I also think is a severely flawed document, despite the fact it's an extremely important piece of evidence. And moreover, we were, and it was Councillor McIntyre, in fact, that requested that Councillor George and the Whitchurch Conservation Area come as experts to discuss the issues, because the standstill evaluation by the Water Cycle Study Company is not in-depth enough as per hydrologist expertise. So Mr. McIntyre, who's not here today, was the one who had requested that they be here to discuss as expert witnesses. And fourthly, I believe Councillor James asked for updated local plan policies, because the local plan update only requires us to amend those bits of the local plan that are not deemed to be meeting the needs of the residents. And what Basingstoke and Deane Borough Council and your department, Ruth, have done has written a wholesale rewrite of almost every single policy, which is not what's under the government requirements. So we've had this exercise where your department has effectively written a brand new local plan, despite the fact that's not government requirements, and various members were involved in the updates, which were not required under government requirements, and Councillor James asked for this committee to receive in hard copy the amended policies before we move forward, because nobody's seen the final amended policies that aren't required by government but that have been unilaterally changed by your department.
Okay. So I'm not going to probably take everything in the right order, Councillor Cubitt. The first thing is, when we actually go through the process of doing a local plan update, it doesn't mean, it does actually involve the assessment and review of all of the guidance and all of the policy landscape that will have changed in relation to those policies. And when you look over the agendas in relation to the policies that have been updated, which was on the March agenda of this year. It's really clear, looking at the pro formas and all of the work that has been done, that what the officers have done is they've suggested changes to those policies so that going forward, our policies would align, and that review process is necessary. So an update of the local plan and what the officers have done is spot on. And, I stand behind that work, and it is a really excellent piece of work, and members received all of that in hard copy. You have before you tonight the agenda as well, which has got all of the, proposed amendments in relation to policies. There's appendices which show the amended policies as well as the proposed new policies. So you do have track change versions, and I am of the view that you have got the materials before you to consider those points. In relation to Monday evening, we had the benefit, and it did go on for more than 3.5 hours, we had the benefit of 2 experts who were commissioned to undertake that work for us. And what's really important is to actually capture that work is at a point in time. It's not actually the very last transport assessment that we'll be having as an authority in relation to our local plan. There's going to be versions of that will go forward based on any changes to our spatial strategy, anything that comes forward from your consultations, and anything that the members and community wish to have shaped will still have to be tested through a new transport assessment update all the way through to Regulation 19. So, the fact that you feel that you didn't have an adequate time on Monday night to understand all of the detail, as officers, we do all of that detail work, and we've ensured that you've had the benefit of the experts. And there's opportunities after Regulation 18 as we go forward for those further engagements as that work evolves. In relation to the water cycle study, I'd have to take some advice from Jo on that. I'm not quite sure if there's another version control that happens. No, so that is the actual version that we have. And we've actually had the EPH meeting where we've discussed all of that. It's for the portfolio holder to consider whether he wishes there to be member advisory panels in relation to some of these technical matters. But some of the matters that you're asking us to bring to a committee to hold in this democratic space could be actually undertaken at a member advisory panel. And it's in those sorts of environments where members of the public who are deemed to be experts could be invited to present their work and have that discussed and questioned. And that's a more appropriate environment for that. It's also a more appropriate environment for us, for our consultants. And you'll recall the first time we discussed the water cycle study was at a member advisory panel. And, if Councillor Ganesh wishes to consider setting such a forum up, then that might create the space for you to have more of those informal conversations, which is at the level and depth that you're seeking rather than at the committee. So that's my officer view, but that's for Councillor Ganesh to consider.
Councillor Cubitt, please be quiet. Please, Councillor Cubitt, no, not at all. I will give you an opportunity of asking that question in a minute. No, I need that, and so be it. Okay, but what I need to do before we come back to this, because I don't care. There are things that I have to do, okay, and I have to go through apologies and replacements, and then we can come back. Okay, the reason why I took Councillor James first was because there was a point of order, in regard to the motion. So first of all, I just want to announce, okay, under apologies and replacements, that Councillor Connetcher replaces Councillor McIntyre, okay, and that Councillor Jones is to replace Councillor Watts. Okay, now, Councillor Cubitt, okay, if you can ask your question.
Very much. I would like to ask Ruth. Firstly, I personally don't think members' advisory panels are appropriate for some of those conversations, because what it does is it takes it behind public arena, and that's why you want it to be in a private arena. And I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's appropriate for water cycle study in the transports. Yeah. Yeah.
Chair, I have to question Councillor Cubitt's comments there. Is she questioning the officer's motives on something? I don't really feel that's appropriate in this meeting.
I have to agree, but Councillor Cubitt, you have a right to reply.
Carry on. I can understand why the administration and the officers would appreciate and prefer it to be in the private domain, and I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's so serious and significant and germane to the whole of this plan. I'm not going to withdraw that comment. I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying I don't think it's appropriate to be in a private environment. But the question I wanted to ask, and it's very important, how many significant changes on local plan updates that you've worked for have changed dramatically from Reg 18 to Reg 19? Thank you very much.
The point is that you can have substantial amounts of changes from Reg 18 to Reg 19. You could have sites come in and out. You could have policies substantially change. Because of the amount of evidence and evolution of the process, you would expect to actually look at these things changing. Housing numbers can change. The needs of the borough, based on evidence, may become better informed, and that then also might influence actual policies. So the amount of work that can change between a Reg 18 and a Reg 19 can be quite substantial. I appreciate that the last time...
In other local plans, I hear what you're saying hypothetically and what can possibly happen, but I'm asking not about what's hypothetical, but what in other authorities has substantially changed between Reg 18 and Reg 19.
Housing numbers, sites, policies. I understand that the previous time that this authority, went through the local plan process, which is for our adopted local plan, the view might be that there wasn't a substantial amount of change, but that is not the process that we're working in. We're actually, we've done a review of the local plan. We're wanting to take that out to the community to get their views, and it may well lead to some substantial changes. And it may actually result in relation to some of the allocations, which is why this agenda tonight is so important for us to actually hear your views, have those reflected to our portfolio holder, so that we can actually progress our work on that basis.
Thank you. I'd like to move on to Councillor Tomlin, please, who is next speaker.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, hold on that last point, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to quickly pick up on the point that Councillor Cubitt made about the changes between Reg 18 and Reg 19. I think we, as an authority, we need to move on proactively listening to residents, and we have this process of Reg 18. And if you do start questioning of, okay, how much is going to change between 18 and 19, I think you've just heard from the officer's perspective and from the administration or the cabinet perspective. I would like to make it clear, okay, we will listen to residents and we will make changes if it's anything related to the policies, or if it's anything related to the sites, or if it's anything related to the housing number. If there's any room for changes, if that means small or significant, we will work on it and make the changes as what has been proposed. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'd like to Councillor Tomlin, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's just going back, and with the greatest of respect, I would argue we didn't debate the water cycle study or the transport strategy. We had a very good presentation. We understood various points, and I ended up with a lot of concerns and worries and was not able to air them because obviously the meeting ran out of time. And to my mind, that is a debate where members discuss their concerns such that we might form an opinion that we either all agree or in fact the concern was not worthy of any more debate. To actually then say, I'm afraid, to get your questions to officers, they will willingly respond. Well, I'm sure they would, but between Monday and today, to get the questions in structured form to the officer and get an answer for tonight so we can have meaningful discussion, it was not ever going to be possible. So I just want to add that we're running in a direction, and it's this, I don't want to slow things down, but I want to do things thoroughly. And that's my concern, that we're not doing things thoroughly and cutting corners to meet some sort of target. We know we're a year later with our plan submission, by the sounds of it. So I'm not saying therefore it'll be 2 years late, but we're already going to be late. Maybe we've got time to speed things up later, but this is, you do your groundwork. If you design something, you spend 90% of your time designing it and 10% in the implementation. And that's what we're missing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just really wanted to talk on what Councillor James said about Dave George. My understanding was that we were asking Dave George to help us as councillors, not scientists, to interpret that report. Obviously, he did come and speak on Monday, and he spoke very well, but he spoke very specifically about Whitchurch. He was asked questions, but there was obviously a limited time. I don't feel that that is what was achieved on Monday, because I still have a lot of questions about that report. And I would welcome an opportunity to sit down, whether that be a map or however we do it, and to be able to ask those questions and have that interpretation from him. I also wanted to say that I am aware that there is a meeting set up with Whitchurch and officers. Dave has informed us of that, but it's not until the end of August. And I understand that there was some disappointment that it couldn't be sooner. Thank you.
Councillor Ganesh, please.
Thank you, Councillor Paradis. We're happy to invite David George for another map session with the members at some point in September, following the meeting with officers, where we can be specific on a particular area or the borough-wide or just specific on any items on the paper, and happy to work with officers and set that up for you. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go to Councillor Koneshko, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points. One is to pick up on the point Councillor Carruthers has made about David George. I think we as a council have repeatedly and unanimously suggested that we should do what we can to challenge the housing number. We've got an expert, a subject matter expert, who has some serious concerns about the water cycle study. So I think we should be doing everything we can in line with those motions that we passed to challenge that and see if there are any grounds on that water cycle study for us to challenge the housing number. So I think it's really important that we get a chance to speak to him as soon as possible. My second point was around the final bit of the motion, which is around the discussion of the other policies. So we've got some policies, some updated policies in our pack today, but we don't have all of them. I think, as we've discovered in the past half an hour, there's some grounds for debate as to whether the elements of the motion have been fulfilled, and we've seen arguments on both sides. But I think what we can't deny is that those additional documents are not present. We're not discussing them tonight. So my question is there an opportunity? It's probably a question for the portfolio holder. Is there an opportunity for us to discuss those ahead of this going to Cabinet? Because the motion seemed to suggest that we should be discussing all of the policies, not just the policies that we currently have in the pack. Thank you.
Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. I think we have an opportunity today to discuss this in detail, and we've had an opportunity to discuss the water cycle study and the transport review, and we were assured by the officers on Monday to come back with the detailed transport assessments between Reg 18 and 19. And in terms of the spatial strategy policies, we've already spent about half an hour discussing whether we should be discussing about the paper. So I think we should probably, this is a great opportunity for us to move forward and, like Councillor Tomlin mentioned, have a meaningful debate on what's present, what's in front of us.
Thank you. I'd also just like to ask the question about are there any opportunities in the civic calendar, okay, ahead of potentially September to have extra meetings? Because it's my understanding that there are not. Sorry, members, we're just checking. Okay, whilst we're checking that, let's go back to Councillor Rattigan, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just for the public's benefit and those of officers, just to say that there is continuing dialogue with Dave George through Councillor McIntyre, and even this afternoon we had an input from Councillor McCormack about the water cycle study. So there are internal debates going on within us as a committee, and I think that is very beneficial. If it is at all possible, obviously I've known Dave George for a long time, if it is possible to have a map or some informal meeting, I think that would be useful. But you know, we do have a lot in front of us. The water cycle, just being reread by me this afternoon, it's a huge piece of work, and it is, you know, difficult, and it will be difficult for our public to understand what it means, because it's sort of suggested that we could take more development, and that agriculture, which obviously in my rural ward is a big player, is the main source of the nitrates and phosphates that are polluting our rivers. So that's the headline. But as to Councillor McCormack's suggestion that we get down to 62 litres a day, I'm not quite sure how we could do that. He's already had 1.5 litres himself in this meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Councillor James.
Thank you. And just, can I apologise to the committee that I wasn't here on Monday? It was my son's graduation, that's why I wasn't at the meeting. But in relation to the motion...
No need to apologise, okay? No, not at all. There was no apology needed.
We spent a lot of time in April discussing the policies, and there was a massive debate, and I spent hours going through those. We were then told on the 8th of June that those changes have been made. So I said, I'd like to see sight of that, because we weren't going to be seeing them before they went out. So you could either have sent them out to us, that was part of the motion, however you were going to give those, but we should see those changes. An example was, I gave on the night, was Basing View. There was a lot of debate about and a lot of concern about that policy. We were told on the night, on the 8th, that the changes had taken place. I haven't seen that. I'd like to see that before that goes out to the public. Then, in relation to the hard copies, you supplied those, and thank you for that. In relation to the debate on the water study, you've heard tonight that there wasn't a debate. We had a presentation but they didn't debate the report. Now, you can say that you did or you didn't. That's up to you. I mean, going forward, I think it would have been wise to have had that discussion. We need to take people with us on this journey. And the other thing is, what we all wanted, because Dave George, it was just very sensible what he was saying. It made it possible for people to understand, and it gave us a feeling of what was really happening in relation to water. And we all have concerns about that. We're all really concerned about the water study and what is happening in relation to water rationing and our rivers. And so we need to be confident going forward, and we didn't have that confidence. Now, my concern is, regardless of the options analysis, is democratically we had a motion before us and that everybody supported unanimously, and somebody has made the decision not to adhere to that. And that worries me enormously. Regardless of the actual documents, you have, as either as officers or as the administration, the chair and the cabinet member, have made the decision to ignore the will of this committee. And I think that is wrong, really wrong. And I don't think that you can do that. So I'm saying to you, you have to adhere to that. You can decide, Councillor, that you would like us to maybe have a map in September. That's not what the motion said. And so I'm saying to you, we want that to happen, and we adjourned the meeting for you to arrange that. Who decided for that not to happen? Thank you.
Councillor Ganesh.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor James, I don't want to sound like repeating the same thing. Yeah, but we have, as per the motion, we have engaged with David George and officers managed to set that meeting up. And if there is a need for David George, or if Mr. David George feel like, okay, he needs to brief the members in a separate occasion or through the members' advisory panel, we are happy to set up that meeting, and the officers are willing to set up that meeting for you. And I think we're missing the point here. We're losing a great opportunity to have a meaningful debate on what is in front of us, and I think we should use the opportunity to give us our constructive comments and shape up the report, and listen to David George at some point following the meeting with him, with the officers. Thank you.
Councillor Cubitt, please.
Yes, Ruth, just a supplementary question in terms of process. In the event that we go through the Reg 18 and substantial changes take place, do we then go back to another Reg 18 with the substantive changes so that our public get a second chance to comment on the changes that have taken place? Or do we go straight on to 19 with the substantive changes being made?
You've got a whole range of options which we'd need to sort of review at the time. So there are some authorities, and you've even referred to them in Hampshire, that are deciding to go back and do second Regulation 18 consultations. That's not entirely necessary, depending on what the nature of the changes are that we want to make and how extensive they can be. There is a consultation process that happens at Regulation 19, so there's still going to be that opportunity as well for members of the community to actually note the changes that have been made based on their consultation and see that in the final Reg 19 plan. So you know, there's more than one way of approaching this, and I think that we need to, I'll say, not box ourselves in at this stage, because we can't be certain of all of the changes that are necessarily going to happen. We haven't yet had a consultation, we haven't yet heard that feedback, so you know, it's all open to us.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, just as a supplementary to that, I personally, I don't know what the other members feel, would feel sufficiently comforted by the officers if you were to make an undertaking that in the event that there are substantial changes made at Reg 18, we go back to another Reg 18. And on that basis, I would be prepared to proceed. However, if you're not prepared to make that, I'm less keen to support, and I don't know what other members are, because it means that the whole process, because we all know, because we've gone through this before, that it's very difficult to get changes to be made. So if you were prepared in principle to commit and undertake to repeating Reg 18 in the event that a substantive change was made, i.e. different sites were chosen, or there were sites that were deemed to be delivering so late down the plan that other sites were having to be brought forward that at the moment are not being considered, then I think members would feel much more comfortable about the process.
Councillor Guinness.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, thank you so much for your sort of a suggestion, and as Ruth explained, we are welcome to, or we are open to discuss all the options between 18 and 19, but we don't want to make any sort of an assumption on a hypothetical situation to have, okay, we're going to have X many changes, which is significant enough to go for another Reg 18. I mean, if that's the case, we will be open to see if there's a need for it, and as an administration, I will be happy to work with the officers. But at this point, I don't want to make any sort of an assumption of, okay, we will be going for significant changes and it will be consulted with the residents through Reg 18 again.
If I can just interrupt there. It's, Tom.
So just one further point, which I don't think we covered, but just whether it offers some reassurance as well. In terms of Reg 19, obviously the decision to go forward with Reg 19 would be a full council decision. So, in terms of that final decision on whether to proceed with the Reg 19, that will be down to full council.
Thank you. Councillor Cubitt.
Councillor Ganesh, I thank you. I would like you to very seriously consider it being an undertaking on the part of the administration. And you make references to we wouldn't like to make a commitment based on hypotheses, but that's exactly what we're doing with regards to this water cycle study, and that's exactly what we're doing with regards to the transport assessment, because they're all based on hypothetical modelling.
Thank you, Councillor Cubitt. Okay. If we can then move forward. Okay. Councillor James.
Where did it leave the motion in relation to those outstanding issues? That's, I'm just asking. So was it about the policies in relation to Dave George? And I guess we're not going to have the other discussions, but if you could just clarify, they're not going to happen or they are?
Hold on, please.
Okay, so what happened, just for the public record, so in March we presented to EPH the development management policies, and I think that the question Councillor James is asking us about relates to having those policies come back to another EPH. Is that the policies that you're referring to when you keep on asking for them?
We did all that work.
Yes.
We didn't see those changes. And were they changed? We don't know whether they were changed. And then I asked, at the meeting, we asked Joanne, and Joanne said they had made the changes. And so what I'm saying is, she said we wouldn't see them, but I said we'd like to see those. You can send them to us if you want to, but we want to see those changes before it goes out for consultation.
If I can just clarify, the officer's work and proposed work that we're doing with the portfolio holder in taking a portfolio holder report to the Cabinet meeting of September is for a full, clean plan, which actually is taking all of the work that you did in March and those changes, and any work that you wish to do this evening and reflect to the portfolio holder as well, and capturing all of that in what we call a full, clean plan. And that will actually show the work that you've done. I understand that you might like to see how that has travelled, and we would offer you that as an officer to member, do you know what I mean, meeting, so you could see how that had specifically changed if you're wanting to see track changed versions. But a full clean plan is what would be appended to the Cabinet report, which is what Councillor Ganesh is working with the officers on in terms of making sure that all of you know that feedback has been reflected in that. So I think
it was an April meeting. We spent a whole evening on policies, as we had on other evenings, and quite often you didn't take on board those changes. So what we wanted to see is, had you, on all of the policies, density, there was loads that we went through, had you taken on board those changes, or had you just not? Joanne said you had, and I'd just like to see them. And I don't want to come in and then sit through a whole, I'd like you just to send them to me so that I can then sit down and read those.
it'll be shared as part of the Cabinet papers. You'll have that.
Councillor Cubitt.
Sorry, so if I could just finally have the constitutional implications of a motion that's been proposed, seconded, unanimously agreed, both in relation to Councillor James's one and in relation to the housing numbers. What is the constitutional requirement that the motion is actually implemented?
Fiona.
Sorry, thank you. So if the decision was made by this committee to do something, then that's a decision that should be implemented, yes. So I think it's difficult to know at this moment is whether you're saying you're not wanting to go through these policies now and you want another meeting to go through the outstanding items, or you want another meeting. You can go through these now and then want another meeting to capture the rest of the recommendation that you made on the last occasion.
Thank you very much, because that's my understanding of how the Constitution operates, but also in relation to the housing numbers, which not only this committee, but also full council has rejected the housing numbers. What happens if we proceed as if we hadn't passed those motions today, which is, of course, what Ruth Ormiller and her team wish to do today with the spatial strategy, which ignores the will of not only this committee but also full council, which has rejected the housing numbers.
I can't recall the express wording of that motion, I'm afraid, was the...
It was that we rejected outright the housing numbers and the use of the standard methodology.
Sorry, Ruth.
Sorry, I'd like to refer you all to the agenda item. If I can, on page 34, meeting overall housing needs and the overall housing number. What we've made clear in the report here is it's been agreed at Cabinet to progress in a timely manner, but it's also really clear that the council objects to the housing number, to the standard method housing number. We've made it really clear in this report that that is actually, the position that the council's taken. We're preparing a Regulation 18 consultation using the standard housing method number that accords with the recommendation that was agreed, and then it was for us to actually come up with a housing paper, a further housing paper to, to actually address the issues that were raised in relation to the actual final number and or the number and the question of exceptional circumstances. So this report, and I might have referred you to the wrong section, but this report actually makes it really clear for the public record we do know and acknowledge that the council, doesn't agree with that number. But we're preparing work which is to sit alongside this Regulation 18 consultation, which is a housing paper which examines those exceptional circumstances and takes forward and does some work in relation to, the points that, you've all been making.
Councillor James.
So going back to the motion, in relation to the policies, that was just a small part of the motion. I personally won't get to see those until the Cabinet papers come out, and then I will have to go to Cabinet to make comment on that. I'll get my 2 minutes and that's all I get. I just wanted, as part of this process, that we are meant to be looking at informing the local plan and shaping it, and I wanted the opportunity to look at all of that work that I'd put in and whether you had taken on board those concerns that I had or whether you didn't. And then I would have had an opportunity to possibly shaped it before it goes to Cabinet. They're not in this paper before us tonight, those policies that I made reference to. They're not here, so I can't do that.
Councillor Gash.
I think, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor James. I think EPH had the opportunity to comment on those policies, and as you've rightly asked in the last meeting, Joe mentioned there were changes. So the members were listened and comments were taken and adopted, and it will be shared with you before the decision-making point, which will be the Cabinet. Thank you.
Councillor Cubitt.
The problem is we've been through this process before, and in fact, I was following very closely the amendments to the wholesale rewriting of our local plan, basically, which is what we've done. And whilst members have made comments, it is not a given that officers have accepted them. That's the point Councillor James, I believe, is getting to. And the problem is that I did actually see the document that entailed all the comments made by all the members in that map, and then whether the officers chose to accept or reject those comments. And there was a very large percentage of those comments made by members that were outright rejected, and the policy wasn't amended to reflect the comments of the members that took place within the map. So there is a democratic deficit here that is in my opinion, very, very serious. And the point about the motions is, what is the point of the motions if we don't adhere to them? And one of the themes that weaves through this document is that this is going to help us meet our 5-year housing supply. And as I said at the very beginning of this meeting, that's absolutely untrue. Nothing that we will do with regards to this paper is going to ameliorate our 5-year housing supply. It's just not. It's completely unrelated. So a local plan update has got nothing to do with meeting the 5-year housing supply. The problem we have with the 5-year housing supply is the strategic sites. Those were identified, and it's not going to ameliorate the 5-year housing supply. So we have a democratic deficit. We have motions that have been passed unanimously, both here and in full council, that have not been adhered to. We are now working on a document as if those motions had not been passed, and we are also working on a document which implies that we're going to improve the 5-year housing supply when we're not. And even then, if we approve the Regulation 18, we might not get a chance to go back to the public to do a proper consultation, even if substantial changes are made, because the council might choose to go on to Reg 19, where there will be almost next to no changes whatsoever, like the time we went last time, where minimal changes get made in between Reg 19 and the actual adoption.
Right, thank you very much. Just before we kind of move on, just to try and bring this to some form of close, what does the committee want to do tonight? I personally would like to go through and make comment on this plan, because I think we've got a good opportunity to actually represent our residents on this. But I am one voice. What does the committee want to do? Councillor James.
I think we echoed this at the last meeting, didn't we? I think this is the concern that we all had, and that this is why the meeting was adjourned, that we wanted that information. We wanted the opportunity to discuss, first of all, to have the water studies and the transport study in hard copy, so because nobody had it and they were all struggling. We then wanted the opportunity to discuss it. We had this week the authors of the report in. There wasn't the discussion on the actual documents. We haven't seen the track changes of the work that was done, the latest lot of work that was done on the document in relation to policy. So that hasn't happened. And we haven't had Dave George in that we wanted. So we adjourned the meeting for that to happen. And I think that those things have to happen. I mean, I know that we're saying that we're delayed in relation to where we are, and it's a year down the line. Well, I'm happy to come, whenever. And we've had 2 meetings this week. I know I couldn't make the one on Monday, but there's no reason why we can't have meetings. We used to have a lot of meetings in relation to the last local plan, and we attended those. But I think we need to have these meetings to be able, and I'm sure that Dave George would come in at a drop of a hat to give us that presentation so that we can ask those questions. You're asking us to make an opinion, and that the Cabinet will then make a decision, not that Council will, that Cabinet will make a decision on Reg 18. We won't see the policies until they go to Cabinet, or I guess when they're we're not going to see those. This is not good. This is not good. And this is not how we do this in this committee, or how we used to do it. And I think that we have to be better than that.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Coneccia.
I just feel like we are going round in circles, and we've just concentrated too much on the water study and transport study. I understand what the other members are saying, but there's so much other things we need to discuss in this as well, such as the green infrastructure, the housing numbers, and we've wasted, well, not wasted, I don't want to use the word wasted, but we've just discussed this for 1 hour, and what have we achieved? Nothing. I'd rather sort of go forward and try to get things moving. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It is a question, I wouldn't say it's been wasted. Okay, members have, the democratic right to actually, question these points. Okay, and therefore a little bit of debate has gone forward. Before I move on to Councillor Tomlin, I will just point out, I'd like to know exactly what the committee wants to do now, because we're all here. Okay, it's 7:30. Okay, what does the committee want to do? Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Well, from my perspective, I have concerns of the water cycle study without going into that in great detail, but I'm extremely concerned from what I read about whether we have enough water available to drink, okay, and all of those strategies. We were presented with it, we've not debated it. That would be something that would affect our housing numbers. It could be an exceptional circumstance. It would affect all our policies. I've also been, as you all aware, asked to chair the Task and Finish group, and one of those sections it will look at will be the rural strategy, if you like, and it will have it could, depends on what happens with members, but it could have quite an impact on changes to this. Now I'm hearing, obviously, we can make changes between Reg 18 and Reg 19, but it's actually it's got the potential to come up with a strategy for members to agree before we even get to Reg 18. But of course, the timing is causing grief. So by moving to get that in place, to get a proper debate on water, to be, with respect, the transport study, it just left me speechless, really, for lots of reasons. So we need to really drill into that one. And you know, then we can start to look at some of the policies. For instance, not in this pack, where are again, as Councillor James was saying, some of the existing policies and the modifications that members requested that we haven't seen, particularly climate emergency, very apt at the moment. We need to strengthen that. We need to actually be bringing that back in, and at least seeing that we as a council are tightening up our frames. We need to get those sort of things right, the key policies that may have changed because of the way the world is currently at the moment. So it's getting it all into the right shape for one, and as Councillor James again said, I'm sure members, it's such an important thing that we would put the hours in. In fact, we did put a lot of hours into the maps. And I have to say, sadly, I do also share that a lot of the valid comments that I contributed to, I haven't seen manifested in changes, or I've seen excuses as to why they were not necessarily relevant. And I don't necessarily understand that because it was just in black and white. So I think we need to fill in the gaps and come back to work it through logically.
Thank you, Councillor Tomlin. Okay, I'd like to give a right reply to Ruth. Okay, and then I will go to Councillor McCormack. But again, my question is, what exactly does this committee want to do this evening? Okay, Ruth.
I just wanted to sort of reflect for all of you that the process, when I say it's an evolutionary process in the preparation of the local plan, there are all sorts of pieces of evidence that our knowledge and depth is going to change over the period of making the local plan. And in terms of the changes that are likely to, want to be made post Regulation 18 consultation, we have the record, we have the actual written record of all of that engagement with you all and all of your comments. Now, it's possible that some of those changes that you've also requested may in fact also be changes that will be requested as part of the consultation process, and we would look and see and make those amendments as it goes forward. So what I wanted to really assure you is that this isn't your first and last chance in relation to the plan, the policies, and tonight is really actually about the actual spatial strategy, the allocations, what sites development would be happening on. So this is actually the key set of policies that you have before you tonight. We spent a lot of time in the beginning of the year going through the development management policies. We did look at the climate change policies, and you're going to have an opportunity to look at those again in the future, and your Task and Finish group may well have recommendations as well that will be brought forward into future version of the local plan. But tonight's actually about the sites, and this is actually I would suggest the most exciting part of the local plan for most of you in terms of where the needs for the borough are going to be met.
Thank you, Ruth. Okay, I've got Councillor Rattigan, please.
Thank you, Chair. My understanding is that the Reg 18 is a living document, so it can be changed, you can add to it, you can make it more alive to policies or instructions from central government. My residents, and I believe the residents of the whole of the borough, are anxious to find out where and how many and where we're going to have policies that will protect them from speculative development, and I see a benefit in getting on with tonight's papers.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I do beg your pardon, Councillor McCormick. Okay, you know, I can only apologise.
That's all right, Chair. In terms of what we should do tonight, I think we should be discussing the papers in front of us tonight. But I also think that we should take the opportunity, if at all possible, to revisit the water cycle study, not least Councillor Tomlin echoed comments that I put in an email tonight. We've had some quite dramatic events in the last few days with the Environment Agency making controversial proposals to extract more water from the River Test than can sustain its wildlife. Now, I didn't see that as part of the water cycle study, but I think we should take that opportunity to revisit it. And I am a firm believer that it's easier for us to do it earlier in the process than later. I'd take on board that we might be able to rewrite the local plan after the Regulation 18 consultation stage. But I think if we do need to have another meeting of this committee, then so be it. I'm not enthralled by the prospect of having lots of meetings of the committee, but I think there's sufficient numbers of people here expressing concern that we should do that and make the time to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Councillor McCormick. I agree that there were some valuable comments on Monday from David George and in the previous EPH, and we should be listening to experts like David George more, and we should be accommodating their constructive feedback and comments into as part of our work that we've been doing as a committee as well as the council. So as I don't want to sound repeating the same again that I mentioned to Councillor James. So we've set up this meeting with David George in August. Following that meeting, I'm happy to work with officers and set up a map where those comments can be listened again from David George to the members, or if you do have any need more of a debrief of the paper, I'm sure he should be able to brought in and give that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I have to say, just from my perspective, okay, I think that if we don't discuss this paper tonight and debate this paper tonight, I think we are missing a huge opportunity. Okay, you know, and I think we will probably be doing, you know, a lot of our residents a bit of a misservice because the paper is here, it's in front of us, okay, and it will be going out to, you know, public consultation. I am concerned that should we, as a committee, decide not to pass comment on this tonight, okay, that we won't have a clear opportunity to debate this again. However, Councillor Cubitt, please.
Yeah, I just want to correct Councillor Rattigan, who said that if we didn't proceed with the papers tonight, that it would result in lots of speculative development. Nothing that we're going to. Yes, you did. Nothing we're doing tonight.
Councillor Cubitt,
nothing.
I did not say there would be speculative.
Councillor Rattigan, please. Okay, I'll give you a right to reply.
Well, I suggest he listens to the YouTube because he implied to his residents, for the sake of clarity, that if we didn't proceed tonight, that there would be speculative planning applications that would come forward. Nothing we will do tonight will prevent those speculative applications from coming forward.
Councillor Rattigan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was talking about my residents and other residents who are anxious about the settlements and for the possible development and for the numbers that may come forward. That is why I think we should be debating this tonight. That's my point.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Councillor Koneska, please.
Thank you very much. I note the portfolio holders' agreement now to hold a further meeting with Dave George, which I think everyone agrees we want the opportunity to question him more. Could I also, because I think the suggestion of doing it as a map and doing it as a map after the cabinet meeting is too little too late. Could I ask the portfolio holder to reconsider that and see if we can do this in a public forum at some point before this goes to cabinet, please?
Thank you, Councillor Kanishko. I'm not sure about the sort of constitutional arrangement around how map work. If there is a room, and after speaking to officers, I'm happy to get back to you on that, because it's very important we bring David George and listen to his expertise, and it's important all the EPH members given an opportunity to sort of debrief the water cycle study, and their comments were, and this is not end of the process. So this is an evolving process. This is just the beginning of the water cycle study being shared, and the members were listened or given an opportunity. This is an ongoing process. So as part of the process, if that possible, prior to the cabinet meeting, if we can set up a map, working with officers, I will work with officers to do that.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, if there are no more questions, okay, Councillor Jones, please.
Oh no, I'm new, but I just want to make a comment. I'm sitting here thinking, obviously, Gary is in my world, we talk, and it seems to me part of this problem is we're trying to put too much through on one meeting. And listening to everybody here, you know, I've been around a long time when we've done local plans, and this is, no disrespect to the officers, I don't, because I don't sit on this committee, but it seems an absolute mess. Anybody listening to this tonight, you know, they wonder what the hell's going on. And I think really, we as councillors have to have the final say. It can't be, we pass it on, we pass it on. That's what I'm listening to. I may be wrong, you can shoot me down in flames if I am, and I'm not having to go at you as chairman. You're doing a good job trying to get through this. I'm glad I'm not there. But I'll just make the comment. I think at the moment we're doing nobody any favours. We keep on referring. We're here for the people, and it doesn't seem like it. We're arguing amongst ourselves. If it means another meeting and everybody on this committee has to have one, and we delay the going out to the public for a week, 2 weeks, so be it. If we're struggling as councillors to understand it, how is the public going to understand it? That's what we've got to remember. And I'll leave it at that. My lecture for the day.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Okay, and I have to say I appreciate the comments on chairing a difficult meeting. Okay, I'm sure you will have plenty of meetings equally as difficult. Okay, as chair of scrutiny. What I'd like to do is, you know, I'm going to ask the committee again. What do you want to do tonight? Okay, are we going to debate this? Okay, are we going to review and comment? Okay, this plan is, I believe, I think we should. Or alternatively, does the committee want to delay it?
I'd like to delay it. I'd like to have Dave George come along. As we said at the last meeting, I would like to see those reports that we were given, that we made comment on, and then I'd like to have another meeting, whether it's delaying it by a week or whatever it takes. I assumed at the last meeting on the 8th that we would then have all of this lined up. Then to read that, oh, we can't have George come along because the officers haven't got the time to meet. It wasn't that we requested that the officers met with Dave George. We wanted him to come to the committee. And so I would like those things to take place. We're being asked to make decisions on sites, and that will be based on the evidence that was before us. And so I would like to have that evidence. I would like to feel confident in deciding what sites. Is Whitchurch in? Is Whitchurch out? If Whitchurch is out, what does that then mean in relation to sites? if Whitchurch is out, is Overton out? I'd like to have an understanding of what the reality is of what the decisions that we make. And I'd like to feel confident. I'd also like to know what changes were made in relation to those policies. And I would like to see those changes.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Carruthers, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, I'm confused. I understand what's happening, I understand what we're talking about, but we're going round in circles, and there's lots in this tonight that affects my residents directly. I'd like the opportunity to look at, and I know they would certainly like that done. At the same time, I have a lot of concerns over unanswered questions. I think we should make a start on this, but I feel if we do that, we need to draw a line. We need to say we're going to talk about this for so long tonight. We need to give it justice. We need to not try and get through this in one night, because that would be ridiculous. We've got an enormous amount of information here that I have no doubt there's going to be a lot of conversation over. I think we would need to take it to a certain time so we can give it justice and talk about it before we all get too tired and worn out to give it proper justice. And I think we need to then reconvene and continue, having had a map or a meeting with Dave George, that we can then go back to some of the areas that perhaps we haven't yet got the answers on. That's my view.
Sorry, members, just having a chat with officers. Okay, Councillor Kotechka, please.
Thank you, Chair. Like my fellow councillor, I do also have a issue with sort of numbers of housing, etc., and my residents are really concerned about that. It's not only that, but it's also about other infrastructure stuff like the green infrastructure, creating jobs, etc. There's loads of different things we need to discuss that will be included in this plan or potentially be included. And we're going around talking about the water study and all that. Yes, I agree, it's important, but at the same time, all this other stuff is important as well. If we can sort of look at the numbers of the housing, etc., and then go back to these other two studies, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, has anybody else got any further comments? We've got comments from Councillor James that she'd like to delay. Okay, are there any other comments, or are the members of the committee prepared to continue and start commenting on this particular spatial strategy? Councillor Peter.
Yeah, in this report, as we discussed, there are so many grey areas. So I would suggest, if before we go ahead with this report, we need clarity on those points. So in my opinion, better delay this and get clarity on all those points and then go ahead.
Thank you very much. Okay, what I'd like to do, okay, is I'd like to put a motion to the committee that we do not delay, okay, and I've moved this from the chair, and I want to debate the spatial strategy tonight, and I want to comment on it for the portfolio holder. Councillor Cubitt.
From a constitutional perspective, do we not have to ascertain whether the motion has already been adhered to before we move on to your motion?
Well, you need a recommendation tonight to move the meeting forward, so it could include.
So do we need to establish, has the motion, which was unanimously approved last time, been adhered to, has been met? So maybe that's the question we need to ask the committee. And then based on those numbers, then we move to your motion, Mr. Chairman.
So I'm trying to follow it through. So if most people think it wasn't met, then what's the implications of that? Are you saying?
If the committee believes that the motion has not been met, and the central premise of the motion was to adjourn the meeting, then we can't proceed, can we? Until we've met the motion.
I still think you need to make another decision tonight to decide whether you want to follow that one, the original one, or you want to go through the papers that are on tonight and perhaps have another meeting to go over the outstanding items that are from the original motion, recommendation.
Right, okay, so if we take it bit by bit, okay, if we can have a show of hands on who believes that the motion has not been carried out from not the last meeting but the previous meeting, okay, the 9th of June, thank you, okay, and that we should not be progressing until we've tidied up that motion. Okay, could we please have a show of hands? Thank you, councillors, and those against that recommendation. And how many abstentions, please? Thank you, councillors. Sorry, committee, we're just having a bit of a discussion up here. Right. So going back, okay, through the motion, okay. What the committee is saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that they want the tracked changes, okay, for the policies, okay, sharing with the committee. Is that correct? First of all.
We had a meeting, I can't remember, it was just before the election, I think it was late May, where was it? Yeah. We spent a lot of time going through a lot of policies. We don't know what happened to those, they just sort of disappeared. We'd like to know what do they look like now? That's what we wanted to know. Have they been changed, or did they not get changed? So when you're talking about density, when you were talking about the green infrastructure, when you were talking all of the policies that we discussed that night, and there was loads, what did they look like, so that we can then comment on the spatial strategy as to, then we wanted to have a hard copy of the two papers, which we've got now.
Just so we make sure we have them covered, please. Okay, so the track changes, okay, we can supply that, okay, and share that, okay, with all members. So that was the first one. The second one was to arrange a meeting with Dave George, okay, so that he can explain the water cycle study to us. Okay, is that correct?
In his presentation on the 8th, he said that there was a piece of work that they had commissioned as the conservation group, and they were doing, and they in relation to working with the borough and working with the Environment Agency. And he then talked about what he could do to support us, and we wanted to hear that evidence, and we wanted to also for him to come along and give his view of the water study and his view and his concerns from that perspective. And we all wanted that, and we all found it really helpful in the language that he spoke. And so we wanted to have an opportunity as members in the committee to hear that. Now, it would have been useful, and possibly not having the transport study this week on Monday, but having the two different perspectives on the water study. And then there's and I know that Councillor has done a lot of work here on reading the study and wants to discuss it. And lots of people do, I'm sure, so people want to have their opportunity to discuss the study as well.
James, thank you very much. Okay, I'm being advised that we can arrange a meeting with Dave George, okay, to bring him here. Okay, but that will be in September.
You're going out for consultation, and we haven't commented. We want to make those comments, and that's what we said. We wanted the meeting adjourned so that we could have this information and then come back. There was no reason. Why can't we have this meeting next week? What's the problem?
Because my understanding is that formal meetings have to be given 5 clear days. Okay, and we don't have. Just hold on. Okay, because I've also been advised that we can't actually have meetings in August. Okay, so therefore that wipes August out. We have a work programme and a meeting in September, and I have just been advised that what we'll do is we'll bump that agenda back down into another meeting, and so we can have the meeting, okay, on the 1st of September with David George if he's available. Okay. Councillor Cubitt.
Why can't we have a meeting in August?
The Constitution says there can't be any meetings other than DC and licensing in August. That's quite clear.
There we go. Okay, so we can arrange a meeting with Dave George and see if he's available for the 1st of September. Okay. Okay. So that covers those areas. Okay. So then moving further on. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Cubitt, did you have your hand raised? No. Sorry, I just saw you in the corner of my eye. That was all. So then moving forward. Okay. We will have covered, or hopefully asked the question on the water cycle study, okay, and then what we'll do is we'll arrange another meeting to, come back for the local update spatial strategy for Reg 18, okay. Is that what we want as members? Councillor Rattigan.
Chair, can I suggest that we do have a meeting before it goes to Cabinet? I think, the input would be useful. Obviously, it is more meetings, but if there's an opportunity to have Dave George on the 1st and us on the 3rd, and the 5th is the date for the Cabinet meeting, or have an early meeting or change Cabinet to 2 days later, I think it would be useful for this whole committee to make sure that we get as much input as we can into that cabinet meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I was listening. I'm just trying to get nods of approval from officers. Okay, so we have an agreement to a public meeting of EPH with David George on the 1st of September. Sorry? The first week of, okay? And so therefore, that will hopefully give members some reassurance, okay, that the water cycle is going forward. Do we as a committee, okay, hold on, Councillor Cubitt, do we as a committee, okay, want to discuss this spatial strategy or any part of this spatial strategy this evening while we are convened? Okay, and what I'll do is I will ask Councillor Cubitt.
Yeah, I'm just going to say in my diary I've already got EPH on the 1st. Yes. Yeah, and on 30th I've got a biodiversity net gain training, but you're saying we're not allowed to have a meeting on 30th.
So that the Constitution is quite clear that the only
The actual paragraph says no meeting shall be held in August except DC and licensing.
Councillor Koneska.
Thank you, Chair. If we don't debate this tonight, is there another opportunity during that first week of September prior to the Cabinet meeting on the 5th, is it? On the 6th, is there another opportunity for us to meet so we can have some input into that Cabinet decision?
As I understand it, there is the 5th. However, I am concerned, okay, that there will be questions from the water cycle study, which we will not have chance to work into any papers, okay. But if we want another meeting on the 5th, I'm happy to push that forward. So we have the 1st, and then the 5th, and then the 5th of September. Is that agreeable with the committee? Is that what we want to do? Certainly. So we have a meeting on the 1st, okay, where we can meet with Dave George if he's available, okay. And then, okay, what we do is we have a meeting to discuss the spatial strategy, okay, this paper here, okay. After that meeting with Dave George, okay, where we can ask him the questions on the water cycle study, okay, and so therefore on the 5th, okay, which will be ahead of the cabinet meeting, then we review and comment the spatial strategy, okay. Is that amenable to the committee?
Just remind me, when is the cabinet meeting? Can't we push the cabinet meeting back a couple of weeks and gives us a bit more time so it's not on the 5th, that we can't we not have the meeting on the cabinet meeting on that night?
It's not in my gift to move that meeting. Okay. It's more in the council leader. I do not have the power to actually do that. I can request it, okay, but I can't, okay, move that meeting unilaterally. That is not my my meeting to give. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. I think the concerns you have is very valued, genuine, and I'm happy to clear if there's anything that concerns you, to bring experts or to bring papers and clear them all. So the two key issues that was part of the motion that the committee believed that weren't compliant or not fulfilled as per the motion. The one was around the policies which officers agreed to share in the first week of September with the track changes, and the second was the water cycle study, where we get some sort of debrief or expert advice from David George, which we are happy to do it on the first week of September. So if these two are fulfilled, okay, then what we have in front of is the spatial strategy. So we have an opportunity to shape the paper that we have in front of us, and I'm happy to sort of listen to and take the comments. And I get your point that you probably might want to discuss this at some point in September, but if there is an opportunity to discuss in September, we could. But I mean, as someone sitting and listening to all your concerns, I think we will probably might end up in the same kind of situation with very less time or without any sort of a time to discuss this in detail. So we should make a start on this spatial strategy and have a meaningful debate that you all want to have today. But it's down to the committee to make the decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor. So, with all the assurances that the committee have received tonight, okay, that we have a meeting organised with Dave George for the 1st of September, if he's available. And then we then look, okay, which is the EPH scheduled meeting, okay. So we will bump the agenda from that meeting. We then, okay, have the 5th of September, okay, which is free date at the moment, okay, where we can then debate the spatial strategy after having time, okay, to read, digest, okay, and understand everything that Dave George has said, okay. So we then have the spatial strategy debate, okay, on the 5th of September, which is then in time for the cabinet meeting on the 6th of September. Does the committee agree with that?
Where do we discuss the two policies, the water study and the transport study?
Just hold on, please, Councillor Whitty. Okay, so I understand that, you know, basically the meeting that we had on Monday, okay, which we unfortunately didn't complete the work there. One of the actions was that any questions on the water cycle study to be put in writing to an email to Joe, copying in me, okay, and then what we'll do is we will make sure that those questions are answered, and to ensure that those answers are then put into the public domain, I will ensure that those questions, okay, with their answers are attached to the minutes, okay, of that particular meeting. As I understand it, that was deemed acceptable for the committee, okay, on Monday evening. So therefore, that covered, okay, the water cycle study with the traffic, okay, study, okay, the study that we have at the moment, okay, that's in front of us as a bit of evidence for the Reg 18, okay, is almost like an interim study based on the potential effects, okay, of the specific sites in, you know, in the spatial strategy here, okay, and I think there were a number of questions from myself, okay, about the modelling. However, you know, the gentleman from the consultant who wrote the report, okay, was questioned quite extensively, and as I understand it, okay, all questions were, okay, were exhausted, So that was debated there. Okay, so that's the transport, impact study. And then when we move to Regulation 19, as I understand it, there will be, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there will be another full transport assessment, okay, which, will then come to this committee for comment, because we will need to comment on that particular transport assessment, which will be based on the sites, based on the Reg 19 plan. Okay, so we will have an opportunity there to debate and discuss the transport assessment there. So I'm kind of struggling to understand what more you want to debate, Councillor James. Okay, Councillor Rattigan.
Chair, thank you. That was a very helpful comment on the transport impacts review. I have to say I was content with Monday's review of that, and was happy that we had discussed it in pretty full detail, especially on the roads and the implications of where they might come forward. And obviously we haven't yet quite decided where that spatial strategy is landing us with development. So I was content as it was, but I will take the committee's opinion.
Councillor Konesko.
Thank you, Chair. Could I suggest as a compromise that if there is time after Dave George's presentation and Q&A on the 1st, that members have an opportunity to ask any final questions on the water cycle study to officers?
Okay, I'm just being reminded that it is dependent on the consultants being available. Okay, if the consultants are available, can we get them back for final questions? So yes, we will ask. Okay. Okay, is there anything else? Okay, so just to recap, okay, and is the committee agreed? Okay, so I want a decision here that what we do is that we adjourn this meeting. Okay, we then have a meeting on September the 1st where we invite David George to give a presentation and also answer questions on the water cycle study. Okay, is that agreed? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And then, okay, we have the 5th of September where we reconvene this adjourned meeting, okay, where we discuss the spatial strategies for the Reg 18, okay, which is, one night ahead of the Cabinet meeting. Is that agreed?
Recommendations we make, or how does the report go forward to Cabinet? You're not going to get that turned round in that time, are you? So how does that work?
Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very good point. I think that's the reason I'm trying to sort of demonstrate the necessity to make start on spatial strategy debate now or today. If that is the case, then the comments can be captured as part of the Cabinet paper by the officers and can be accommodated. So I think I have said a few times, it's very important to give your constructive comments and views on spatial strategy, and it is important that we accommodate all those comments and officers take note of those prior to a decision-making point, which is the Cabinet. And I think it's a great opportunity to start or make start on the spatial strategy today, if there's an agreement among the committee. Thank you.
If we met on the Friday before, would that give you more time to write or not? Is that?
Which date is that?
Is it the 1st, isn't it, or second? So it gives you more time, or?
I was under the impression that the only dates that we have available are the 1st and the 5th. Okay, is that correct? Councillor Guinness.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think we have 1st of September. It's unfortunate that we can't have any sort of committee meetings during August. So if there's an opportunity, we can discuss on the same night as we have the presentation from David George. That probably might give us enough or sufficient time to continue. So for example, if we make start today and adjourn the meeting as soon as we finish the presentation or discussion or debate with David George, that could give us a little bit of a time, or at least 4 days, the prior to the cabinet meeting, if the members agree as a committee.
Councillor Rattigan and then Councillor Peter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I make a suggestion that we demand that the whole Cabinet arrive here on the 5th of September to listen to what we say, and then they will understand what we are aiming for. So all 8 of them rock up here and listen to us, and then there won't be any possibility of any non-understanding of where we're trying to move this.
I'm sure that's a possibility. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I think that's a really good suggestion, because to have all the decision makers on the chamber listen to you from first hand, but I will make the request to every single cabinet member, subject to their availability on the day. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Peter, please.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry to ask you this question. You mentioned if David George is available. If he's not available, do we have a plan B?
Thank you very much for asking a very tough question. At this particular time, I do not believe we do, because we need to get in contact with Dave George. Hopefully he's watching this on YouTube, okay, and hopefully he will be able to clear his diary. But at this particular time, the answer is no. Councillor Ganesh.
Thank you, Councillor Peter. We will work everything possible to bring David George in for 1st of September, subject to his availability on the day. But if he is not available, but he has agreed to meet with officers during August, so we are happy to capture everything and share with you in advance if he is not available for 1st of September as an alternative, as a plan B, as you suggested. Thank you.
Is the committee happy with that way forward? Yes, no? Councillor James.
Sorry about this. Is the Friday available, the 2nd? Is that a date that is available or not? So that it gives us...
Thank you. As I understand it, it is not available. As I understand it, the only dates that we have free, okay, before the cabinet meeting, are the 1st, which we had an EPH meeting already set up for, and the 5th. Those are the only 2 dates, okay, as I understand it. Okay, so therefore, is the committee happy? Okay, again, and you know, I would like an agreed, okay, or at least some indication that the committee is happy, okay, that we adjourn this meeting, okay, and then we meet, okay, on the 1st to question David George. Hold on. Okay, and then we potentially may have some time after that presentation, but I do want to give David George, okay, as much time as he needs to be able to fully answer everyone's questions, okay, on the water cycle study. Okay, so then we would debate, okay, the spatial strategy on the 5th of September, hopefully with the full cabinet's attendance, okay, and then, okay, on the 6th, there will be the cabinet meeting, okay. Are we happy with that, first of all, okay, and secondly, do members want to start, you know, the spatial strategy tonight while we have everyone here, okay, and you know, the meeting is in progress? Councillor Cubitt.
My only comment, at this juncture to that question about are we happy about it, is that a meeting one day before a cabinet whose papers have been published is not going to change outcomes. But that's my, I mean, it's basically a tick box exercise, because there's nothing that's going to be changed substantially in those cabinet papers from a meeting the day before.
Councillor Guinness, but I have to say I think I disagree with that, because things can always be changed under urgent matters.
Thank you, Councillor Cubitt. I take your valid point. That was exactly the reason I was asking the committee if they are happy to make a start on have a meaningful debate on what is in front of us. That's one. The second is to have, as suggested by Councillor Rattigan, to have all the decision makers in here, in the chamber, listening to you the entire debate. That will have some sort of an implication on the decision making next day. So we have two sort of, I wouldn't say opportunity, but it is a great way forward to take your real concern. I completely agree with your concern, but we have two opportunities. One is to make start on the debate today and have all the decision makers on 5th of September. Thank you.
Thank you. So again, you know, I hate to keep banging, you know, that drum, okay, but is the committee happy to debate or start the debate on the spatial strategy? I would like answers, please. Is it a question that we have to go through a kind of roll call to get an understanding of where people are?
From my perspective, I won't be at your next meeting, so I'd sooner you didn't, but I'm a sideline, if you see where I'm coming from. But surely the rest of this committee can't just sit there and be quiet. They've got to say one way or the other. They really, otherwise we're going to look a bit silly if we don't actually make a decision.
Correct. Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. However, I do want to say that, you know, while you're here in the committee representing your residents, your viewpoint is extremely valid, and just as valid as if you'd been here all along the way. Okay, so please, you know, I'm just as interested as hearing your comments, okay, on the spatial strategy as everybody else is. But what I'd like to do is, if necessary, I will do a roll call, okay, of members, okay, to see what wants to happen. Okay, you know. Okay, so let's start with Councillor Tomwin, please. Okay, do you want to discuss the spatial strategy tonight?
I feel it would be compromised to do it. So no.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor James, please.
I think the same as well, but are there any policies here that are in, that you could look at that are not going to be, you know, that are there policies that you were wanting to change on pages? There are, but were they? How were you going to take the meeting tonight in relation to? Were you going to take it page by page, or how were you going to do it? But I get the point that Councillor Tomlin. That's why we adjourned the meeting, because we wanted this additional information.
Thank you very much. I was going to take it section by section, okay, to give everybody the opportunity of questioning the policies. But if I remember correctly, just a couple of minutes ago, or maybe 10, 15 minutes ago, you were saying that you wanted to see the track changed policies. So, you know, we need to ensure that, you know, members have that before we discuss any policy, surely, because we need to understand. No, just hold on, because we need, just hold on, Councillor James, because we need to understand, okay, from what you're saying, exactly what has been changed, okay, for each policy, surely.
Like the officer was saying, there are some policies in here that we hadn't seen and we hadn't discussed. So I'm saying, did you want to discuss those? But I think we'll be compromised. Let's adjourn the meeting.
I am just being advised by officers that these spatial policies are the first time that we've actually seen them. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, you know, I will be happy to put that the committee debates those. Okay. Councillor Jones, you've already said, okay, what you feel. Councillor McCormack, please.
I came here tonight to discuss the business on the papers, but I just fear that we're not going to have time. That seems to be the overriding take-home for all these meetings. So maybe it's better if we defer it.
Thank you much. Councillor Rattigan, please. Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. Councillor Kotechka.
I'll be happy to go ahead this evening as well. What I'm concerned about, if we do stop the meeting, will we have the same situation next time? So I'm happy to go ahead and discuss this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter, please.
I would say no tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make a start, but I'd like to do it with the agreement that that's all we're doing. We're making a start. It's already 8:30, and I think we need to make sure that we're giving it the proper time it needs. I'm also a little bit concerned that once we've had these other meetings in September, we may then be going back over some of the things we talk about tonight, and we need to be mindful that that could be the case. However, we're here, and perhaps we should at least begin to look at this.
Thank you, Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Cubitt.
Intellectually, I agree with Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you very much. Councillor Conesco.
There is a part of me that wants to get this done tonight because I'm concerned we're going to run out of time on the 5th. That said, I think it's difficult for us to debate this without having seen all of the evidence and having the discussion, having the expert input. So mine's a reluctant delay.
Thank you very much. I'm just to basically give my permission or position. I am for the debate, okay, to take place tonight. However, okay, as a result of the straw poll, there are 7 councillors, okay, that have said they want to delay. Okay, there are 4 councillors, okay, that they want to debate. So the delays have it. Okay, just hold on, please. Okay, so it's just a recommendation. Okay, so therefore it's a recommendation of this committee tonight that we delay discussing, unfortunately, the spatial strategy for the Reg 18 consultation. And basically we will adjourn to the 5th of September. Okay.
So can I just clarify then? So the 1st of September is the water, is David George and water issues, yeah. And the 5th is the spatial strategy. Okay.
No, that wasn't part of the thing. Okay, so hold on.
Can I just also say on the work programme at the moment for the 1st of September, you've got other matters. Are you saying to take them off the work programme for the 1st? Yeah. Okay.
And we'll push them to later on in the year. Okay, so thank you very much, members. I am disappointed. Okay, but we'll take the majority view. Okay. As ever, we're a democratic committee, and I would like to adjourn this meeting, okay, to the 5th of September, and the time is coming up for 8:30. Thank you very much for your attendance.